Starting off this countdown, we have DuckTales Illuminati. In Season 3, Episode 13, in an episode of DuckTales titled Yuppie Ducks, fans notice something quite strange in the background of a scene. So in this episode, Scrooge gets a bad itch and has to go to a doctor. The doctor has some weird decorations in his office, though. In the background, there's an eye chart, but the eye chart clearly reads, "Ask about Illuminati." It's not that subtle at all. And why is it that the animators decided to throw in that little subliminal message? Are they trying to tell us something? In our 9th spot, we have SpongeBob's TV. And if you guys are liking this video so far and you want to see more content like this, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Not gonna lie, SpongeBob is filled with dirty jokes. As kids watching the show, it often went over our heads. But if you go back and re-watch the episodes, chances are you'll understand what the writers were truly trying to convey. Take the scene of SpongeBob featured in the episode Your Shoes Untied. In this episode, SpongeBob forgets how to tie his shoes, but that's irrelevant. In one scene, SpongeBob turns on the TV and relaxes back in his chair. On the TV, we see Sea Anemone dancing back and forth. SpongeBob is clearly into this. Then Gary enters the room and he quickly switches the channel to a football game. And he's clearly embarrassed, implying that what he was originally watching was inappropriate. Gary caught him right in the middle of him watching a rated R program. In our 8th spot, we have the Three Little Pigs. Disney is sick for including this in the show. So let's take a look at the Three Little Pigs. In one scene, we see the pigs singing and dancing in one of their homes. But beside them in the back is a framed picture of sausages. And we all know that sausages are made out of pig. To make matters worse, the frame is labeled as father. So their father got turned into sausages and eaten. In another scene, we see another framed piece of meat artwork. This time, it's a ham leg, and it's also labeled father. So the Three Little Pigs' father was killed, hacked up, and sold as different meat items. Disgusted. Moving on to number 7, we have Adventure Time. Adventure Time is just another one of those shows that is filled with inappropriate jokes. But there are 2 main episodes that I want to talk about today. The first one being the episode titled, What Have You Done? In this episode, the Ice King accidentally infects all of the Candy Kingdom with an ice plague. And so Princess Bubblegum looks back through her research book to see if she's got a cure for this. Well, as she is flipping through the book, we see a number written on the page, 531-8008. Look at this number in the mirror and it spells out boobs. It does. They also carefully place the dots in the numbers to represent, you know, come on, you get it. I don't have to say it. The next episode I'm going to be talking about is the one called Blank-Eyed Girl. Now this isn't as subtle as the last episode, but basically in this episode, Jake and Flynn are looking for the creepy stuff book. While exploring a shelf with many books, they come across one titled Butt Stuff. Again, I really don't need to explain this. Moving on at number 6, we have the Rugrats. Grandpa Lou from the Rugrats always creeped me out. And the next scene from the Rugrats proves that he's just as creepy as I always thought he was. So in one episode, we see Grandpa Lou babysitting Tommy and Chucky. He tells them that he rented a movie for them. He says, and I quote, "Let's get down to some real fun. I've rented you boys some movies." He then holds up a movie featuring the Reptar. And then he holds up the movie that he rented for himself. He then says, "But my personal favorite is Lonely Space Vixens." The movie that he's holding features a green-skinned female alien in a bikini. He then laughs and wiggles his eyebrows and says, "Now that's for after you go to bed." Ew! Ugh, I'm sorry, like that definitely wasn't necessary. Ugh, get that image out of my mind. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Dexter's Lab. For this show, let's take a look at the episode titled Nuclear Confusion. In this episode, Dee Dee steals an important part to one of Dexter's inventions, and then decides to make him go on a scavenger hunt before he can get the piece back. One of the clues told Dexter to look next door, so he goes there and we see him in the kitchen with the neighbor lady. There she offers him cookies, but drops one to the floor. She then goes to retrieve it, and written across her bottom is Dad's trophy. Just take that in for a moment, okay? Obviously, the next clue was for Dexter to go look at his dad's trophy. But we all know that that has a double meaning. Also, how the heck did Dee Dee manage to write that across her bum without her even feeling it? I'm concerned. In our fourth spot, we have the Krusty Krab. This next fact, or whatever you want to call it, has ruined SpongeBob for me. I can never look at the show again the same. So SpongeBob, as we all know, lives in an underwater town called Bikini Bottom. He works at the Krusty Krab. The Krusty Krab in Bikini Bottom. Just think about it, okay? Not only that, but there's also the Chum Bucket. Bikini Bottom has a Krusty Krab and a Chum Bucket. If I have to explain this, then you're too young to be watching this video. The creators really thought they were sly with that one. Coming in at number 3, we have Dexter's assistant. How did we not catch on to this as kids? We were just so young and naive. Okay, in an episode, Dexter gets fed up with Dee Dee and decides to hire a replacement. He then hires a woman named Candy, a very tall and attractive blonde woman who is blessed in the chest area, if you get what I'm saying. At one point, Dexter asked her to dance around. She replies with, okay, but it's $50 extra. Also, the fact that they named her Candy? Come on. They made that too obvious. In our second spot, we have the Genius. Here's another dirty reference from SpongeBob. Are we surprised? I'm not. So in the episode titled Texas, Sandy gets homesick and wants to go home. If you guys know, then you know. You're lucky we're keeping that in for you. Patrick and SpongeBob are trying to think of ways to make her feel less homesick. During this conversation, Patrick has a good idea, and SpongeBob says, Patrick, your genius is showing. Patrick then panics and quickly covers his crotch area. What rhymes with genius? Yeah, you know exactly what he thought SpongeBob was referring to. And in our number 1 spot, we have Rocco's Modern Life. This next hidden message was a little too much, and in the end, it ended up being cut out from the episode. So let's take a look at the episode titled Hut Saw-Raw. In the episode, we see Rocco picking berries from a bush. Upon picking one of the berries, we see a bear run out of the bush, whimpering while holding his crotch, implying that Rocco picked the wrong set of berries, if you know what I mean. Now, this scene did see air, but then it was edited out by Nickelodeon for future broadcasts, and for the Season 2 DVD release. But in Canada, they didn't bother to edit out, and they just let it play with this interesting scene still in it.
At number 10, we have SpongeBob is satanic. You mean that little square dude who just wants to love everyone and is nice to every last person he meets? Well, not just him, but the whole show. There's a theory floating around that the whole show has satanic undertones and is trying to convert kids into worshipping Satan. There's a few episodes that conspiracy theories have dissected and pulled out some questionable bits and pieces, but they're all pretty far-fetched. The backbone of this theory is the fact that SpongeBob was originally supposed to be an animated show for adults, and the 7 main characters represent the 7 deadly sins. Let me break this down for you like a fat kid who sat down too fast. First, we have Mr. Krabs, who is obviously greed. If you've seen the show one time, there's no need for me to explain that. All he cares about is money. Next, we have Plankton, who is envy. His entire existence is about how he wants his restaurant, the Chum Bucket, to be better than his competitor's restaurant, the Krusty Krab. He is extremely envious. Maybe don't name your restaurant the Chum Bucket if you're trying to have people enjoy themselves. Sandy is clearly pride. Her love of Texas is displayed in almost every episode she's in. Patrick is clearly sloth. He spends most of the early episodes just lying around, and he is a starfish, which is a naturally slow and docile animal. Squidward is wrath, constantly getting angry at SpongeBob and almost killing him on a couple of occasions. Gary is gluttony. This one is a little harder to notice, but almost every time SpongeBob talks about Gary, he says, I gotta feed Gary. There's even an episode where Gary abandons SpongeBob, all because Patrick has a cookie in his pocket. And finally, we have SpongeBob, and the only sin left is lust. Now, SpongeBob certainly isn't trying to have sex with a bunch of people on the show. It's obvious that's not happening. He's not a Jessica Rabbit type figure. He's not very sexual. Also, the crossover between Jessica Rabbit and SpongeBob is enough to give a war veteran nightmares. And now, because I said it, someone on the internet is drawing it. But realistically, SpongeBob loves everyone. He's trying to make everyone happy and is quick to show everyone his never dying affection. This is why he is lust, and the whole show might be about worshipping the devil. Whoa. At number 9 we have the Teletubbies are slaves. Oh yeah, this just keeps getting darker. The Teletubbies never get to decide anything in their strange drug trip of a world. They have a narrative voice that will talk to them and tell them what to do, even when they don't want to do it. They have a pinwheel that spins and sprays them with some sort of dust which causes them to go to sleep. It kinda seems like a mind control. And then there's that giant face that floats in the sky, constantly watching them like the Eye of Sauron. It is a baby, but it is still terrifying. The whole situation has the feeling of something pulled right out of George Orwell's 1984. Maybe the show's hypnotizing kids to believe that a life of orders and surveillance is okay, but that's a theory for another list. At number 8 we have Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget are one and the same. The goofy cartoon Inspector Gadget has a clumsy cyborg detective stumbling through cases aided by his niece and his dog. The villain of the series is the faceless Dr. Claw, who remains a mystery to the viewer for the entire show. Speculation suggests the reason the arch enemy of Inspector Gadget never reveals himself to the audience is because he is in fact Inspector Gadget himself. Not the exact same guy, but the original. It's implied that Inspector Gadget is a cyborg, being mostly human with some cybernetic upgrades. What if he was all robot and put in place to replace the real Inspector Gadget, who was thought to have died in an accident, but the original didn't die in the accident, became Dr. Claw, and wanted revenge on the police force that put him in the situation that nearly killed him. The accident would explain the creepy voice and the crippled arm that is always reaching out and why it's all covered in metal. Maybe. At number 7 we have Charlie Brown has... Oof, this is a dark one. I never said this was going to be a happy list. Let's start with the visuals. He's got no hair, and it's not because he's too young. Many of the other Peanut characters are rocking full heads of hair. There's also the fact that he's always sad. This could be because he knows what the future holds for him. Even though he gets to hang out with his friends, the future seems pretty bleak if you know your time is limited. Also, all the adults talking that language. This could be Charlie Brown blocking them out because every time an adult talks to him, it's all related to his terminal condition. Or that adults are talking in medical terms that he doesn't understand. Either way, this is a pretty dark theory about Charlie Brown, which I hope isn't true. At number 6 we have Scooby-Doo takes place during the Great Depression. Why else would every business owner, mayor, and dude living next to a costume shop be trying to fool people into thinking they are monsters so they can make away with huge profits? It's because there's no damn jobs. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Plus, back in the 30s, at least 80% more people believed in ghosts, which is like a totally true statistic I just made up, which made a plan of someone dressing up as a creature for profit more believable. Could you imagine pitching that plan as a criminal today? So how do you guys want to rob the bank? We're gonna use guns? Or we could dress up as spooky things and scare the money out of the bank? At number 5 we have Winnie the Pooh links to Mania. This is similar to the SpongeBob theory that every one of the main characters represents every one of the 7 deadly sins. This theory suggests that Pooh and his friends individually represent different mental disorders. Let's start with the obvious one. Eeyore is depression. This dude never smiles and it's impossible to get a laugh out of the guy. Piglet has a brutal case of anxiety. I mean, his catchphrase is "oh dear." I don't think he ever stops worrying. Rabbit has OCD. The owl is dyslexic. Tigger is jumping around, bouncing off the walls with his ADHD. And finally, the star of the show, Winnie the Pooh, is compulsive. You don't spend all day seeking out enough honey to pack up a supermarket if you have great self-control. At number 4, the Teletubbies are linked to Harry Potter. We have more Teletubby theories to throw on this list. Honestly, I've never seen an episode of Teletubbies, but I've come across a couple of these theories and I feel that they shouldn't be ignored because they are so outrageous. So each Teletubby has a symbol on top of its head. One of them is the lightning bolt, which is of course the symbol that is on Harry Potter's forehead. And the other 3 Teletubbies have a circle, a triangle, and a line. Combine these symbols and make what? The symbol for the Deathly Hallows. Whoa! What does this mean? I really have no idea. I mean, it could mean that the Teletubbies were former wizards from the Harry Potter universe that were exiled to another universe because they practiced the dark arts. And now that's why they live in this world controlled by outside forces, because they were formerly superpowered wizards that are now prisoners and they are forced to be in these forms so they can't escape and then take over the world. I am deep in the Kool-Aid on this one. At number 3 we have they're eating Pokemon. When directly asked about eating Pokemon, the developers of the games have always dodged the question, but there are several instances that point towards everyone in the Pokemon world eating Pokemon. For instance, the Pokemon Farfetch'd. In its backstory, it says the reason that they are so rare is because they were hunted almost to extinction. Also in the anime, there is more than one occasion where we see Pokemon deep fried or sliced and diced. And honestly, it's not that crazy. Some Pokemon fans freak out at the idea of people eating Pokemon in the Poke universe, because Pokemon are supposed to be your companion companions, but it's not all that different from what we do in real life. There are some animals like cats and dogs that we have claimed as pets and we will not eat them ever. And there are other ones that we give the factory farm treatment to. I'm sure it's the same in their world. You eat the ones you can't win battles with, and then you probably befriend the ones that are made out of rock, because you can't eat them. And number 2, we have Courage the Cowardly Dog is hallucinating. By far, this is one of my favorite cartoons of all time. It's so strange, the art style is one of the best of its era, and its main character is a dog just trying to be a good boy. Come on, that's amazing. What more could you ask for? But what if all the strange monsters, ghosts, and intruders that Courage is seeing in every episode weren't even there? What if they're all hallucinations? This could either be some sort of drug trip from his owners giving him some sort of medication, or because he has little doggy schizophrenia. I don't know if dogs get mental disorders, but if it was true, I guess this could be the case. There is also the theory that this is how Courage sees the world, which is very depressing. Seeing monsters 24/7 would be very stressful. And for the number 1 spot, we have the Smurfs are white supremacists. Holy cow, this is a wild one, but there is a decent amount of evidence. I'm not saying watch this video and then destroy all your Smurf collectibles because they represent a hate group. I'm just throwing these dumb theories out there and then you do what you want. But you might look at the little blue creatures a little differently after this. So first off, there's the obvious point that they're all wearing little white suits with little white caps. On top of this, their leader is the only one who doesn't wear white, but he wears red and he also practices magic. Well, the leader of the KKK dresses in all red and he's called the Grand Wizard. And if that's not enough for you, it's thought that their main enemy is supposed to be a Jewish man. His cat is even named after the Jewish angel of death. So are the Smurfs racist? I don't know, maybe. They were created back in 1958. I feel like racism grew on trees back then. Number 10, Dirt Girl World. This show is about a girl who runs around in what seems to be an abandoned junkyard looking for things in the dirt. Now the show is not scary because it teaches kids terrible hygiene habits, but because they're giant strange heads and faces. They all look like their faces are peering in from the wrong side of a magnifying glass. Their creepy distorted faces look like something that would be looking at you from your window while you're having a horrible fever dream. Every time I look at one of these things, I keep picturing that annoying orange.
Hey Apple! Hey Apple!
It took me a while to figure out why I find these creations so unsettling, and it's because they've taken human features and slapped them on top of cartoon faces. Every character in this cartoon looks like they should be on the Cursed Images subreddit. Number 9, TERRAHAWKS. I'm so happy I grew up in the anime era and not the era where people thought kids wanted to watch shows where the stars were nightmarish marionette puppets. TERRAHAWKS was a show about a group of space cops that defended Earth from an alien invasion. The funny thing about this show is that it starts with NASA having a base on Mars in the year 2020. Guys are just a little off. But the disturbing thing about this show is the villain, Zelda. She's basically the scariest puppet I've ever seen. She looks like a rotting old woman that is waiting for you to fall asleep so she can suck your life force out or bake you into a cake. In what kind of dark future did we let people get this ugly? Also, over the next few weeks, every time someone mentions Zelda, I'm not going to think about an amazing game series, but a cross between the Simpsons Crazy Cat Lady and Team America World Police. I don't want to. Number 8, are you afraid of the dark? If you didn't grow up in Canada, then you don't remember a group of preteens sitting around a campfire ready to share ghost stories. Are You Afraid of the Dark was a kids horror show that would take live action looks at different haunted tales. It was like Twilight Zone for kids. The episodes would have all different kinds of themes crossing different eras. Some would lean more into the supernatural, where others would be more along the lines of science fiction. As a kid, the show would scare me so bad. I remember my mom and sister bugging me about how I was afraid of the I'm Cold episode. But now looking back, it just seems like a lot of budget bad 90s acting. Some things were not meant to be revisited. Number 7, the hilarious House of Frightenstein. Over in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, back in the 1970s, a group of writers thought about pitching a horror-themed comedy show for kids. The result was the hilarious House of Frightenstein. The show had a wide range of segments. They would vary from educational, music, jokes, some of the worst special effects I've ever seen in my life. The show was pitched as an extremely cheesy take on B-list horror movies crossed between some elements from a talk show, and boy did they ever nail it. It sounds very bizarre, but it was actually a big hit, recording 130 episodes, and it even starred one of the creepiest men in history, Vincent Price. The thing that made the show such a huge success wasn't the unorthodox approach to edutainment, but it was the airing schedule. The show would air twice a day, once in the morning so it could catch kids before they went to school, and once during late night so it could catch stoners who wanted to watch something weird. Number 6. Jigsaw. Let's do a jump across the pond and take a look at a 1980s children's show called Jigsaw. For the most part, the show is pretty normal, except for the demonic looking freak of nature, Mr. Nosybump. This tuxedo wearing terror looks like he can smell every inch of fear he induces into the public. His pale face and suit make him look like he went to the Slender Man school of fashion. Not to mention the gigantic grin he's got ripping across his face. That paired with his gigantic eyes give off an expression that he can't wait to turn your body into furniture. Not only does this guy look like a creep, his hobby is growing more Nosybump clones in a greenhouse. So that means there could be more than just one of these freaks running around on the loose. No thank you. Number 5. IE Yoga. When you were a kid, I bet you would sit around all day thinking, man, I wish I could just learn some yoga right now. No kid has ever been jonesing for some yoga. That's not a thing. So I have no idea how this show got passed. It's about a 50-something-year-old man teaching kids yoga with his chicken mascot sidekick who's Jamaican for some reason. Now the part of the show that creeps me out is about how often this guy helps these kids get into poses by getting hands-on. Why is this a show? Why did parents let their kids be on this show? Who is this old man? All of this makes me so uncomfortable, so I'm just gonna move on. Number 4. Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson. After 20 seconds of watching the show, you're gonna be begging me to put on some VeggieTales. The Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson is probably one of the worst named shows of all times and stars puppets with eyes deader than Lindsay Lohan's acting career. It was a cable access show to help kids learn about the Bible, and I'm guessing whatever the Bible constitutes as science. It would have some made up Christian songs along with some old classics. Something that's really throwing me off about the show is that there's 2 main characters, both of which that are puppets. One is a human man and the other is a green alien. Do Christians believe in aliens? I've never been to church, so I'm not sure what the rules are, but I thought Scientologists and girls who buy crystals were the only ones who pray to the stars. Number 3. The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald. What's even worse than having the main character of a kids show a creepy marionette doll? Well, why not a clown? The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald starred the Clown Prince of Crime running around the world doing crazy things. Now I know the Clown Prince of Crime is actually the Joker, but who's really more threatening? I wonder what kind of wacky adventures they got up to. Like, hey, today let's spread childhood diabetes, yay! There wasn't just Ronald on the show, but there was also his misfit gang of McDonald's mascots, like the Hamburglar and Grimace. The part of this show that makes it scary is just the idea that McDonald's found another way to make their borderline toxic waste more appealing to kids. Number 2. Goosebumps. I don't know what kind of childhood you had if you never heard of Goosebumps. It's the insanely popular book series that got turned into a kids show that would take each one of the books and transform them into a live action episode. Looking back, most of them were pretty cheesy, but as a kid, I could barely watch the intro. One of my favorites was the Mudman. This creature would come alive when it rained and then would harden in the sun. His weakness was literally dehydration. Even though every episode of this show is pretty tame now, the idea of putting a Halloween mask on that you can never take off was a real concern of mine when I was 9. Nowadays, I'm only afraid of my tax return. Number 1. Ren and Stimpy. This one is definitely the granddaddy of them all. Ren and Stimpy had it all. Gore, violence, suggestive themes, banned episodes. The creator of the show eventually got fired from Nickelodeon for taking the show too far. If you've never seen Ren and Stimpy, it's about a cartoon dog and his friend, and the two of them do some of the goriest things I've ever seen animated. More than once in the show, a random character will take a cheese grater and shred a part of their body. The two main characters were so unstable, they both show signs of several mental disorders, and this show was hated by parents all over North America. I know it because when I was a kid, it was the one show my parents wouldn't let me watch, so I would have to sneak it whenever they weren't home.
Starting us off with number 10 is EERIE, Indiana, almost like a precursor to Stranger Things, which I also have not watched. Either way, this early 90s series starred Hocus Pocus actor Omri Katz as Marshall Teller, a teenager whose family moves to desolate EERIE, Indiana, where the population was only 16,661, where a seemingly normal small town was never what it appeared to be. From school nurses that administer eye tests that brainwash students to ghosts coming back from the dead and eerie time travel, this show was way before its time. The worst part, this show aired on Saturday mornings. What a way to kick off the weekend. Coming in at number 9 now, we have Ghostwriter, produced by the Sesame Workshop, the group behind Sesame Street and the Electric Company. Yes, you just heard that right, the producers of Sesame Street. Now, this show was about a group of friends living in Brooklyn who solve mysteries and crimes through their use of words in literature. They say words can't hurt. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Clearly, they will. This group will hurt you with their words. Intended to make children love reading and writing, the supernatural catch was that the young sleuths were aided by a ghost. That doesn't mean the show didn't have creepy episodes, it definitely did. Do you remember that nightmare-inducing character of Gooey Gus? It was just like a toxic Avenger-looking purple monster that spit slime into the mouths of the kids, which I feel like should be illegal in some capacity. Writer Kermit Frazier revealed that Ghostwriter's true identity was that of a runaway slave during the Civil War who was killed by his owners. Talk about very morbid and very racist. Now at number 8 we have Freaky Stories, a sort of Twilight Zone for kids. This animated show consisted of a series of 5-minute shorts of different animation and art styles that revolved around campfire stories and urban legends, which kind of sounds exactly what our channel is. Interesting. They range from original stories to well-known legends like the killer in the back seat, the hook man, or the babysitter and the man upstairs, which influenced the movies Black Christmas and When a Stranger Calls. It's so funny, I know for a fact every single person watching this knows those 3 stories, or a variation of them at least. I think the weirdest part for me was the hosts of the show, a slimy maggot and a blue cockroach looking thing. Each story had some sort of message or moral at the end, with several episodes devoted to characters committing crimes and paying dearly for them. Like an episode about a guy who tries to steal gas from an RV but instead hooks up to the septic tank and gets a nasty surprise. Each episode begins and ends with the phrase, "This is a true story. It happened to a friend of mine." That's actually quite funny. But either way, that also made the episodes all the more ominous for the kids. Coming in hot at number 7, we have Animorphs. Now you guys all absolutely had an older sibling who was all like, Animorphs is a big kids show, which is exactly why you wanted to watch it. We've all been there. My sisters did not watch this, but I feel like I was there. No, it's about 5 kids who are given the power to morph into any creature they wish to help them fight villainous Visa 3 and his fellow Yeerks, a breed of parasitic aliens threatening Earth. Maybe it was a morphing into an animal that tripped me out, or the fact that the plot was super heavy for the fan base it was created for, but either way, very, very creepy. Coming in at number 6, we have the Demon Headmaster. If the title alone isn't unsettling enough, the plot definitely is. The original series ran between 1996 to 98 and starred Terrence Hardiman as the horrifying head. Back then it followed a girl called Dina Glass who notices something strange about the school she attends with her foster brothers. The Demon Headmaster rules his school with his sea green eyes through which he hypnotizes the pupils. Kinda sounds like some of the Salvatore brothers on The Vampire Diaries. Love that. When Dina arrives, she sets up Splat, a group designed to protect the pupils from the head's paranormal powers and to break his dictatorship. They were talking about a reboot last year, but the story has changed a little bit. Has anyone dared to watch? I certainly haven't. Coming in at number 5, we have The Secret Worlds of Alex Max, starring Alyssa Olenek, a teenage girl with a normal life until she's doused with a chemical that gives her abilities, including but not limited to shooting electricity from her fingers and liquefying into a mobile puddle. That's a fun skill. Wish I could turn into a puddle sometimes, and I'm highly embarrassed. The near accident that involved a chemical plant's truck spilling on her could have easily made her into a Marvel character, and the show did have the sense of wavering between being a superhero show, but it wasn't. It was terrifying alone that she could just liquefy. On cue, liquefy. At number 4 now, we have GOGS. From 1993, GOGS revolves around a family clan of dumb, primitive, and socially inept cavemen in a fantasy prehistoric Stone Age setting and contained much dark comedy, various toilet humor based gags, and gross out situations, like the cavemen losing control of their bodily functions. Here's the thing, this show wasn't as terrifying in terms of plot as some of the others on the list, but everything about it was absolutely beyond cringeworthy, and you can imagine your little 8-year-old self watching this with little context and thinking, what the hell? The sound effects alone just still haunt me. I mean, not still, when I YouTubed it this morning. Coming in at number 3, we have Tales from the Crypt / Crypt Keeper. This popular TV series was directed towards people of all ages. It frightened both young and old alike, with the famed Crypt Keeper who was just humorous enough to make you think that the show might not be too scary after all, but still creepy enough to make your skin crawl, and he also made the introductions and closing comments for each segment with witty puns that really did have a dark humor about them. I'm not gonna lie, you did well. You creep. The show brought some big time celebrities on board throughout its 7-year run. Being so popular, HBO subsequently came out with Tales from the Crypt Keeper, and having the show as a cartoon and toned down a bit still didn't totally make the whole idea less scary. Despite the show's light-hearted spin, episodes include tales about what would happen if you cry wolf, encounters with monsters, and getting sucked into a gravesite, all of which I would not want to experience myself. And I don't wish it upon any of you either, my lovely precious subscribers. Filling our number 2 slot is Goosebumps. It was a tough choice making this number 2 because it is arguably the most famous of all creepy kids shows from this era, and whether you read the books that the TV show was based on or not, Goosebumps was bound to give you nightmares if you watched it as a kid. I read so many of the books growing up and I absolutely loved them. They did scare me a little bit. If I was reading them home alone, I'm like, oh, is the dummy gonna come get me? Is the dummy alive? You know the ones I'm talking about. Somehow this children's show was able to sneak things in that the children's shows of today wouldn't dare to do. From Slappy the living dummy terrorizing his owner to entire family basically dying on their trip to Horrorland, to an episode where a mask gets permanently stuck to a kid's face. Like, this is no joking matter. None of this is a joking matter at all. And finally, coming in at number 1 is Are You Afraid of the Dark? It is not a question, it is in fact the name of the show, and it tops this list because it preceded on number 2 and paved the way for creepy storytelling that would haunt everyone for years to come. Round of a slow applause. Now this show is a Canadian classic and it's centered around a group of storytellers who are just on the verge of entering their teen years. How exciting teen angst ensues. Now each would take turns telling the rest of the group the scariest stories they could muster while gathered around a campfire. This gave viewers an even eerier setting to kick off the creepy tales, and honestly I'm just getting creeped out thinking about it. It was extremely dark for younger viewers, but that didn't stop them from watching it. They ate that up. If you want to play a cruel Halloween joke on your friends, then have them watch some episodes like The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner, and The Tale of Watcher's Woods. However, if you really want them to sleep with a nightlight on for the foreseeable future, have them check out The Tale of the Dead Man's Float. The crimson red corpse that rises from the depths of a pool looks like a poltergeist escapee.